It is a quiet, devastating truth that the very people you are afraid to lose are often the ones tearing you apart. Each forced smile, each one-sided relationship you cling to, erodes your focus, your peace, and your potential. Who in your life offers comfort, but never truth? Who have you kept near, not because they deserve it, but because you fear what their absence might reveal in the silence that follows? True power isn't built through addition, but through subtraction. The world tells you to network, to expand, to be likable. But Stoic wisdom reminds us that we often suffer more in imagination than in reality. We remain chained to dead weight, not from love, but from fear. This is not merely about cutting off the toxic. It is about reclaiming your clarity. The real danger is not the enemy outside your walls, but the weakness you allow inside your circle. If you are brave enough to face that, you are already ahead of most. If you are walking this path toward stillness, self-mastery, and inner strength, consider this a vow to raise your standards, to live deliberately, and to guard your peace like the treasure it is. There is a warmth in agreement. It is quiet, smooth, effortless. Someone nods as you speak, echoes your opinions, supports your every move. For a moment you feel seen, understood, validated. But it is in that comforting silence that the first cracks begin to form. Because what looks like loyalty is often just self-preservation in disguise. Not everyone who agrees with you is on your side. In fact, the person who never disagrees may be the one preparing to vanish when you need them most. True loyalty has weight. It has texture. It is willing to risk the friction of disagreement and the discomfort of truth. But most people are not seeking truth. They are seeking protection by blending in, not standing out. So they adapt. They mirror your energy. They become agreeable, not from conviction, but from calculation. Think of the last time someone backed your decision, only to disappear when it failed. The moment things grew difficult, they retreated, distanced themselves, and acted as if they never had a voice in the matter. That was not betrayal in the loud, obvious sense. It was abandonment dressed in politeness. That is the danger of the agreeable. Their silence feels like support, until it becomes invisibility. As Epictetus said, "It is better to be rebuked by the wise than to be praised by the ignorant." The person who cares enough to challenge you, to tell you when you are wrong or drifting, is the one whose loyalty is built on truth, not transaction. Real allies are not echoes, they are anchors. They stand with you not because it is easy, but because it is right. Our culture, however, teaches us to seek comfort, to surround ourselves with those who make us feel good, not those who make us better. So we collect people who validate us, who mirror us, who smile at us, but who vanish the second our foundation shakes. These are not friends, they are spectators. The moment you start climbing, they either fall silent or applaud without meaning it, because they were never invested in your growth. They were invested in staying close to your light without ever having to carry a fire of their own. Carl Jung understood this duplicity. He believed that people wear masks not only to deceive others, but to avoid confronting their own contradictions. So too do your agreeable companions. They are not lying to hurt you. They are lying to survive. Their agreement is a shield, a way to remain accepted, to stay near influence, and to protect themselves from scrutiny. But when pressure comes, when truth is required, their survival instinct takes over and their silence becomes absence. That is when you learn. Loyalty that costs nothing is worth nothing. Real loyalty is disruptive. It interrupts you when you are drifting. It confronts you when you are in denial. It speaks up even when the room is tense. These are the people to build with, not those who flatter, but those who speak the difficult truth without fearing the loss of proximity. Loyalty is not passive. It is participatory. A loyal person engages. They offer feedback, challenge assumptions, and bring their full self into the relationship, not just their agreement, but their honesty. When they disagree, they do so from a place of respect, not rebellion. That is the difference between the loyal and the silent. The loyal risk being uncomfortable, the silent avoid it at all costs. Seneca wrote, "The friendship which can cease has never been real." The same can be said of loyalty. If someone's presence is only secure when things are easy, when you are right, when you are shining, then it is not loyalty at all. It is comfort. It is self-interest. It is a conditional presence, and you cannot build anything stable on such ground. You cannot rise with people who only nod but never speak. Their silence may feel like support now, but eventually it will become the loudest void you have ever heard. So start watching more closely. Listen for who challenges you, not with hostility, but with care. Notice who dares to say, "I don't agree," and still remains by your side. That is a rare and powerful thing, something you cannot afford to overlook. The people who never disagree are not proving their loyalty. They are hiding their true position. They watch you, learn your habits, adopt your language, not because they believe in you, but because it is safer than standing apart. And when the storm comes, when your judgment is tested, when the decisions you made begin to break, those same people will vanish. Or worse, they will say, "I never really believed in it anyway." Not because they were against you, but because they were never with you to begin with. Their loyalty was to their own comfort. You deserve better. You deserve people who are not afraid to tell you the truth, even when it stings, who remain when things fall apart, who challenge you not to break you, but to build you. That is real loyalty. And in a world full of agreeable faces, it is far rarer than you think. Be someone who values the voice that dares to speak, because the ones who stay silent to keep the peace will leave quietly when that peace is gone, and you will be left wondering if they were ever truly there at all. They will tell you they are just having a bad day, then another. Then it becomes a season of bad days. One moment, they are bursting with ambition, full of dreams and declarations. The next, they are drowning in doubt, pulling you down with their silent despair. They do not lash out. They do not sabotage you with obvious harm. Instead, they collapse, slowly and quietly. And in their collapse, they ask you to carry not only their weight, but the crushing burden of their instability. At first, it seems innocent. Someone you care about having a rough time. But over time, their inconsistency becomes the atmosphere you breathe. Their moods dictate your peace. Their confusion clouds your clarity. You find yourself adjusting, shrinking, compensating, not because they demand it, but because they never stabilize. When someone cannot find their own footing, they will begin to lean on yours. This is not support. It is a slow erosion. It is what Carl Jung described as the danger of identification. When one person's emotional wounds begin to blur the edges of another's identity, you do not notice it at first. You excuse it. You empathize. You remain patient because you are a good person, because you believe people can change, and they can. But not everyone will. Some are more committed to their patterns than their potential. They want your presence, not your progress. Your time, but not your truth. And when you start to rise, they do not stand beside you. They panic, because the higher you go, the more their unresolved pain is exposed. So they pull, not violently but emotionally, through guilt, through helplessness, through a silence that demands your attention. Their suffering becomes a performance you are expected to attend, day after day. Stoic philosophy teaches us to never surrender what is ours, our reason, our focus, our direction. to that which lies outside our control. Yet emotional inconsistency is a quiet thief, persuading you that their chaos is your responsibility. But it is not. Their mood swings are not your fault. Their chaos is not your cross to carry. There is a difference between helping and absorbing, between empathy and entanglement. If someone's unpredictability makes your peace conditional, that is not love. It is dependence disguised as connection. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." But what happens when the soul begins to absorb the color of someone else's? The collapse of a relationship built on inconsistency does not happen all at once. It happens when you wake up more tired than rested, when your excitement begins to feel like guilt, when your wins are met with their silence, their distance, their subtle sabotage. It is not open envy. It is self-pity that disguises itself as need. And if you are not careful, you will start to feel responsible for carrying both lives, for fixing moods that were never yours to manage, for being the foundation for someone who refuses to stand on their own. You are not here to be a caretaker for broken boundaries. You are here to build. And building requires stability. It requires energy that multiplies, not energy that evaporates every time someone close to you forgets how to stand. The difficult truth is this: not everyone can go where you are going, not because they are evil, but because they are still searching for a reason to move forward. Sometimes they see your direction as a threat, a mirror reflecting everything they have not faced. And instead of rising with you, they fold and ask you, without words, to carry both the map and their indecision. Seneca warned that life is long if you know how to use it. But time spent managing emotional inconsistency is not life, it is limbo. It keeps you tethered to cycles that never end, conversations that repeat, apologies that come too late, and promises that disappear by morning. The more you invest in someone who will not stabilize, the more your own balance suffers. This does not mean you become cold. It means you become clear. Compassion without boundaries is not noble. It is self-neglect. You are allowed to say, "I love you, but I cannot hold you up anymore." That is not abandonment. It is maturity. You build with people who have done the work, who have faced their storms and learned how to walk again. They bring energy into a space, not confusion. They do not need rescuing every time reality strikes. These are the ones who will hold you when you fall, who will not make your success a source of their shame, who will not shrink every time you expand. They are not perfect, but they are consistent. They are grounded, and that kind of person does not drain you. They sharpen you. They give, not just take. And when the weight of life appears, they carry it with you, not ask you to carry them. The people in your life either become your peace or your pressure. They either water your growth or make you question your own roots. It is not about judgment. It is about discernment. Once you begin to value your time, your energy, and your clarity, you will stop calling inconsistency potential. You will call it what it is, instability. And you will stop negotiating with it. Because when you allow inconsistency to stay, it does not stay still. It spreads. It shapes your days, rewires your tolerance, and makes dysfunction feel normal. That is not a life rooted in strength. It is a slow surrender. You are not cold for walking away from emotional chaos. You are not cruel for choosing stability over sympathy. You are allowed to protect your focus, your future, your fire. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And who you truly are cannot emerge in an environment of constant volatility. So if someone's presence is built on collapse, let them fall. Not because you want them to fail, but because you refuse to follow. And that, too, is a form of love, the kind that knows when to stay and when to let go. There is a unique discomfort in the presence of someone who explains too much, not because they are enthusiastic, but because they are managing. They over-explain. They justify things you never questioned. They rush to explain why they were late before you have even asked. They preemptively clarify something they said yesterday, why it came out wrong, how it was not what they meant. At first, it seems harmless, perhaps even considerate, but when you step back, you see the pattern. These are not people trying to connect. They are people trying to control a perception. Every word is a defense, not a dialogue. Every explanation is a shield, not a truth. And the more they talk, the less you actually know them. Over-explanation is not a sign of honesty. It is a subtle confession that the truth cannot stand on its own. The constant need to control the narrative, to soften the edges of their behavior, is not transparency. It is the anticipation of judgment. It is damage control before any damage has occurred. Because deep down, they know their actions do not align with their image. They are hoping that if they talk fast enough and long enough, you will not stop to examine the gap between what they say and what they do. Marcus Aurelius reminded us, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one." But the over-explainer does not live by this. They argue, they elaborate, they decorate their failures with carefully chosen words, hoping the truth gets blurred before it is seen. We live in a world where words are cheap, but character is quiet. The person who stands in their truth does not need to sell it to you. Their consistency does that for them. Their presence holds weight without shouting. They are not perfect, but they own their imperfections with steadiness, not with spin. Carl Jung once said, "You are what you do, not what you say you'll do." The ones who rely too heavily on language are often trying to cover an absence of integrity. They fear the silence because in silence actions echo, and their actions cannot hold that weight alone. When someone constantly feels the need to narrate their intentions or reframe every misstep, ask yourself, why the urgency? Why the fear? People who are grounded in truth can afford to be still. They can let their actions speak because they trust that their patterns will tell the true story over time. But over-explainers live moment to moment, constantly patching holes, afraid that if they stop talking, the illusion will fall apart. It is not always malicious. Often, it is insecurity, a deep-rooted fear of being misunderstood, disliked, or losing control. But that does not make it harmless. When someone is always on the defensive, you end up carrying their anxiety. You start to question your own instincts. Their performance becomes your confusion. And eventually, the clarity that Stoicism values above all else gets clouded by the sheer noise of their explanations. It is also a tactic of control. By flooding the space with justifications, they are overriding your right to form your own interpretation. They want to decide how you see them, rather than letting you observe and conclude for yourself. When someone is afraid of your honest judgment, they will try to narrate their way into innocence, again and again. But innocence does not require a monologue. Innocence holds still. It does not fear being misunderstood, because it knows the truth survives silence. Seneca taught that a man's worth is revealed in how he handles being seen. People who are comfortable with themselves do not need to explain their every move. They are okay with being misunderstood at times, because they know who they are when no one is watching. The over-explainer, on the other hand, lives as if they are always being watched, constantly performing to stay safe. Eventually, you learn to stop listening to what is being said and start observing what is being done. The person who explains too much is often hiding too much. They are trying to stay one step ahead of your perception because they do not trust that their choices would hold up under real scrutiny. The moment you stop giving them the reaction they want, they panic. Not because you have been unfair, but because their mask is slipping without the glue of constant narration. Watch how people act in silence. Notice who shows up without needing applause, who apologizes without a prepared speech, who admits fault without spiraling into justification. That is where real trust is built, not in words, but in presence, not in explanations, but in patterns. When someone has to constantly manage your view of them, it means they do not trust themselves, and they are asking you to do the emotional labor of maintaining their fragile image. You do not owe anyone that. People reveal themselves not in what they say, but in what they repeat. The person who talks you into trusting them is usually the one you should trust the least. Let their silence speak. Let their actions echo. And when the words pile up too fast, ask yourself, what truth are they trying so hard to keep buried? Because what is real never needs convincing. It simply is. They arrive in your life quietly, often under the guise of admiration. They adopt your language, echo your tone, and begin to quote your ideas as if they were their own. At first it feels like alignment, like you have found a kindred spirit. But slowly, something feels off. It is not just that they agree with you. It is that they are becoming you. Your mannerisms, your phrases, even your values, they mirror it all. But imitation, however flattering, lacks the one essential ingredient: conviction. They have not absorbed your essence, only your image. And when the environment changes, when your path shifts, or when you stop providing the direction, they begin to fade. Or worse, they reinvent themselves in the shadow of another, just as they did in yours. For some, it is easier to become whatever the moment rewards, adapting not to grow, but merely to survive. In the stark landscape of survival, authenticity is the first casualty, traded for the fleeting warmth of approval. These are not strategists with a plan. They are chameleons with no center. They are not building anything real. They are blending, hiding behind a collage of borrowed beliefs and recycled personas. They know precisely what to say in all the right rooms. But when the rooms change, so do they. Because at their core, they are anchored to nothing deeper than proximity to power or relevance. When someone builds a connection based entirely on imitation, it can feel flattering at first, perhaps even familiar. But there is a profound difference between resonance and replication. True connection is born when two people stand in their own truth and meet eye to eye, not when one mimics the other simply to maintain closeness. It might be subtle at first. They adopt your philosophy. They mirror your routines. They adjust their goals to align with yours. But as they draw closer, an uneasy feeling begins to surface, the sense that you are being followed, not joined. You will notice that when you slow down, they slow down. When you shift your course, they shift as well. Not from a shared vision, but from a deep-seated fear of losing access. That is not loyalty. It is dependency in disguise. And this dependency is fragile. The moment you create distance, the moment you challenge them to stand on their own, the cracks begin to show. They become confused, even resentful. They might lash out or disappear entirely because their connection to you was never built on mutual respect. It was built on mimicry, and mimicry cannot survive without constant exposure to its source. Epictetus taught that it is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows. The chameleon believes they have mastered your path because they have rehearsed it so perfectly. But rehearsed wisdom is not lived wisdom, and when life puts their imitation to the test, it inevitably falls apart. This is why you must learn to separate those who walk with you from those who walk in your shadow. A shadow, after all, disappears the moment the light changes. Real people remain. They have no need to imitate you because they are too busy becoming themselves. They may admire you, be inspired by you, even learn from you, but they will never dilute who they are to match you, because their identity is not threatened by yours. In fact, they welcome the challenge. Anchors do not drift. They stay grounded, not by copying, but by contributing something distinct. They bring perspective, friction, and honesty, qualities that demand self-awareness and inner strength. You do not need echoes in your life. You need anchors, people who do not vanish when the season changes, people who stay rooted in their own truth while helping you grow in yours. Because relationships built on imitation breed only silence. No new ideas, no growth, just endless repetition. And over time, that repetition becomes suffocating. You find yourself drained, not by conflict, but by the profound emptiness of being around someone who only reflects you and never reveals themselves. And as flattering as it may seem, there is something deeply lonely about being surrounded by mirrors. Even Socrates, in his relentless pursuit of truth, warned against the false comfort of unexamined lives. A person who imitates others without ever turning inward is living a life that is borrowed, not built. Their words do not originate from experience. Their values do not rise from hardship or reflection. They simply adopt what appears to work. But life, eventually, reveals what is real. Trials test conviction. Pressure exposes the pretender. And when the time comes, the chameleon slips away, searching for another skin to wear. This is why discernment is so vital. Look closely at the people around you. Do they challenge you? Do they offer new perspectives? Do they hold their ground when they disagree? Or do they simply conform to your rhythm, because it is safer than being truly seen? The Stoics taught that clarity begins with courage. The courage to see people for who they are, not just for how they appear when they agree with you. And once you see through the imitation, you can never unsee it. You begin to recognize when someone is curating themselves instead of expressing themselves. In that moment, you have a choice. Continue to nurture a reflection or seek out the substance of a real relationship. Let your circle be made of those who have roots, not masks. People who do not just blend in when it is convenient, but who stand firm when it is hard. Because if everyone around you is simply echoing your thoughts, your vision is not expanding. It is being distorted. You are no longer evolving. You are being applauded by an audience that knows nothing of substance. Choose those who do not need to become you in order to respect you. Choose those who do not follow your path, but walk alongside you on their own. Because true power does not come from being imitated. It comes from standing beside those who are strong enough to stand alone. Some people do not walk into your life. They rush in. From the very beginning, they open up. Fast. Too fast. Within hours of knowing you, they unspool the deepest parts of their past, exposing wounds that most people guard for years. They confess traumas, share secrets, and swear that this connection is unlike anything they have ever felt. At first, you might mistake this for trust, for vulnerability, for something real. But it is not. It is a performance, a tactic disguised as truth. Because intimacy, when it is genuine, is never rushed. It unfolds slowly, quietly, authentically. What they are offering is not intimacy. It is manufactured closeness. And it is not for your benefit. It is for control. This kind of emotional fast-tracking is not about bonding. It is about anchoring you. It is about making you feel so emotionally entangled, so early on, that any attempt to create space later feels like an act of abandonment. And when you do try to pull back, when your intuition warns you that something is wrong, they do not react with grace. They remind you of how much they shared, of how close you have become, of how you must care, because they were so open with you. But openness without boundaries is not vulnerability. It is manipulation. It is a carefully disguised method of forcing guilt into a space that should be defined by freedom. It is what Carl Jung warned against when he spoke of projection, because what they share is not always about connection. It is about using you as a container for feelings they refuse to process alone. Manufactured intimacy creates confusion. On the surface, it feels flattering. Someone is letting you in, trusting you, choosing you. But real vulnerability does not arrive without context or pace or discernment. And when it does, it never demands reciprocity. It invites it, gently, when the time is right. This forced closeness feels different. It is sticky. It is drenched in emotion but lacks any real depth, because what is happening is not trust. It is pressure. You are being emotionally cornered into a role you never asked for. Not a friend, not a partner, a savior, a therapist, a witness to a chaos you never signed up to hold. The Stoics believed in measured connection, in being slow to speak, slow to trust, and quick to observe. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that it is not what happens to you, but how you react to it, that matters. This kind of emotional flooding, however, gives you no time to react. It overwhelms you, making reflection nearly impossible. And before you know it, you are pulled into their storm, not by force, but by sentiment. You did not fall into a relationship. You were dragged into an emotional contract you never had a chance to read. This is where the sabotage begins. You start feeling responsible for their emotional well-being. You begin censoring yourself to avoid triggering their insecurities. You avoid distance, not because you desire closeness, but because you fear their response. You fear being called cold, distant, uncaring. They do not ask for love. They constantly demand proof of it. And if you fail to provide it, they make you feel as though you have broken something sacred, something you never agreed to build in the first place. This is why trauma bonding is so insidious. It bypasses the natural, gradual process of building trust. Instead of growing together, you are trauma-welded. Their wounds become the glue. And the more you try to detach, the more they bleed on purpose, just to keep you close. True intimacy, by contrast, is slow and steady. It is not built on what is said in the first week. It is built on what is shown in the first year. Through action, through consistency, through the quiet, unspoken signals that say, I am here. I see you. I do not need to unload my past to prove it. Aristotle believed that true friendship is based not on usefulness or pleasure, but on goodness, on mutual respect, on time-tested virtue. Manufactured intimacy skips all of that. It is a fast food connection, high in emotional calories but devoid of any real nourishment. It leaves you feeling full and empty at the same time. And when the intense emotions inevitably fade, you are left with someone who does not truly know you and never wanted to. They just wanted someone to cling to, someone to anchor their chaos. And if that someone is no longer you, they will move on, just as quickly as they arrived. The hard part is recognizing it while you are in it, because it is so easy to confuse intensity with depth. But depth is quiet. It does not demand. It does not rush. It respects space, pace, and silence. You will know it not by how quickly someone shares, but by how patiently they listen. Not by how much they reveal, but by how they respond when you say no, or not yet, or I need time. The person who honors your boundaries, even when it frustrates them, is the one worth trusting, not the one who floods you with feeling to fast-track your loyalty. So if someone tries to bond too quickly, if they turn your first conversations into confessionals, if they ask for emotional favors they have not yet earned, pay attention. They are not looking for connection. They are looking for control, and it is okay to step back. It is okay to say, "This is too much, too soon." It is okay to protect your peace without apology. Because true closeness is never coerced. It is chosen again and again through presence, not pressure. And when you remember that, you stop falling for the illusion of intimacy. You start choosing what is real. You start protecting your inner world not just from harm, but from intrusion. And you realize that being loved is not about how quickly someone gets close to you. It is about how well they hold space while they earn the right to stay. They always seem to know what no one else does. The ones who arrive bearing whispers, warnings, and stories laced with just enough drama, just enough truth, to sound credible. They smile as they share the secret, making you feel special for hearing it, like you are now part of an inner circle. But while you are listening, while you are nodding in quiet agreement, something else is happening just beneath the surface. They are not just informing you. They are conditioning you. They are grooming you into a space where gossip feels like connection, where shared secrets masquerade as trust. But the price you pay for that moment of inside knowledge is far higher than it first appears. Because gossip is rarely innocent. It is rarely just entertainment. It is a tool. Sometimes a shield, sometimes a weapon. But it is always a signal. A signal that the person delivering it lacks boundaries. A signal that they carry people's reputations in their hands as if they were holding water, loose, careless, spilling everywhere. They dress it up in smiles, in feigned concern, even in false empathy. "I just thought you should know. Don't tell anyone I said this, but..." And in those phrases, what they are really saying is, "I trade in the names of others, and one day, I will spend yours too." Marcus Aurelius warned, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." The gossiper wants to fill your mind with noise, with other people's failures, private matters, and missteps you were never meant to see. Because gossip, by its very nature, drags your attention downward. It tempts you to judge instead of reflect, to feel superior instead of curious. It invites you into a loop of suspicion and distraction, keeping your focus on what others are doing wrong instead of on what you should be doing right. And the longer you stay in that loop, the easier it becomes to forget you were never meant to be there at all. It often starts with charm. They are witty, observant, and socially sharp. They always have the latest story, and at first it seems harmless, maybe even useful. But the more you let them speak, the more you realize they are not just telling stories. They are practicing a craft that carves wedges between people, one whisper at a time. And those wedges do not just separate you from others. They separate you from yourself. You start questioning people you once trusted. You start filtering every conversation through a lens of doubt. Because the moment you hear one thing, you begin to assume two more. You start to wonder, what are they saying about me when I am not in the room? And that is the core truth. The one who brings you gossip is the one who will carry your name into the next conversation. Carl Jung once said, "Shame is a soul-eating emotion, and gossip is shame, weaponized." It is the spreading of shadows before a person has a chance to stand in the light. It is built on fragments, half-truths, and interpretations warped by ego. And when your name becomes part of that economy, your character is no longer your own. It is shaped in spaces you have never entered, by people you have never met, because someone decided your story was easier to sell than to understand. That is the danger. You will not know when it begins. You will not see the fire until it has already spread. And by the time the damage is visible, the trust you have spent years building has been eroded by invisible hands. Gossipers do not burn bridges with flames. They do it with smoke, with suspicion, with suggestion, with the soft corrosion of what people believe long before they ever meet you. Their power is quiet. But that does not make it any less destructive. You do not need to confront them. You do not need to match their energy. You simply need to step away, without drama, without warning, without becoming another story for them to tell. Let your silence be your boundary. Let your absence protect your name. Epictetus taught that we should never argue with fools, because people watching may not be able to tell the difference. The same applies here. If you fight a gossiper, you step into their arena. You validate their methods. But if you walk away, if you become unavailable to their narratives, you deny them the one thing they need most: access. And when you do, something powerful happens. Your life becomes cleaner, quieter, more your own. You stop carrying the weight of conversations that were never meant for you. You stop wondering what other people think, because the people who matter will speak to you, not about you. You begin to realize that real relationships are built on discretion, on loyalty, on respect when no one is watching. The ones worth keeping are the ones who protect your name as if it were their own, not because you are perfect, but because they understand that everyone deserves the dignity of being known directly, not interpreted through someone else's mouth. Seneca said, "The longer you sit at the table where other people's reputations are the main course, the more likely it is that your own will end up on the plate." You do not need to hate them. You do not need to expose them. You just need to refuse to be near them. Because some people do not need to be confronted. They just need to be uninvited. And when you do that, you do not just protect your peace. You raise the standards of the entire space around you. Your silence sends a message. Your distance draws a line. And over time, the people who respect you will know exactly where you stand, not just by what you say, but by what you no longer allow. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Not because you are afraid, or because you lack the words, but because you have already seen enough. You have watched the same pattern repeat again and again. Promises made and just as quickly broken. Excuses rehearsed. Apologies that sound more like strategy than sincerity. At a certain point, you no longer need more evidence. You simply see it for what it is, a cycle, not a one-time mistake. And the truth is, once you truly see it, there is nothing left to explain. There is no confrontation to stage, no final speech that will fix what was never built to last. We live in a culture obsessed with closure, telling us to write it all out, to share how we feel, to have the talk. But not every door needs to be slammed shut to be closed. Some are better left locked and untouched, sealed not by noise, but by quiet recognition. Because silence is not avoidance. It is precision. It is a conscious decision to no longer give your energy to that which drains you. You do not owe anyone a dramatic goodbye. You are not obligated to unpack your healing journey for their validation. You do not have to justify your growth to someone who is only comfortable with a smaller version of you. Power, real power, does not scream. It disappears. It becomes unreachable. And when you stop responding, not just with words, but with your attention, they begin to feel it. Not because you are punishing them, but because their influence collapses in your absence. What once felt so significant begins to feel hollow, and that is the one consequence they never expected. People often mistake silence for weakness, but silence is the final boundary. It is what you offer when all other forms of respect have been exhausted. The louder they become, the quieter you grow. Not out of fear, but out of resolve. You have chosen not to let their noise penetrate your peace. That is not cruelty. That is discipline. Epictetus said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation. Silence is how you protect your mind from that trap. It is how you remind yourself that your energy is a privilege, not an entitlement." and what they feel is not abandonment. It is irrelevance. It is the stark realization that the person who used to respond, explain, defend, and react is simply no longer available. They no longer have access to your emotions, not because you are spiteful, but because you have reclaimed them. The bond is not broken with force, but with stillness. And in that stillness, the weight shifts. They no longer shape your narrative. You do, not through resistance, but through removal. This is what most people misunderstand. They think healing requires reconciliation. They believe letting go means writing letters, holding hands, and forgiving loudly. But true growth often happens in the shadows, in the quiet. It happens when you stop asking someone to treat you better and start treating yourself as someone worth protecting. It happens when you stop proving your pain and start preserving your peace. Because at some point, the desire to be understood is replaced by the desire to be free. And you find that freedom by pruning your life, not with rage, but with clarity. By letting go of those who dilute your values, not because you hate them, but because you have finally chosen to honor yourself. There is a quiet elegance in walking away without turning your departure into a performance. You need no applause for the sacred act of protecting your peace. You owe no one an explanation for your absence. For those who truly see you, words are unnecessary. And for those who demand them, words were always unheard. You know a profound shift has occurred when your silence carries more weight than your presence ever did. You are no longer negotiating for a place at the table. You have built your own. You are no longer asking to be heard. You have discovered the profound peace of no longer needing to be. This is a power that can never be taken from you, for it is forged within. It is born from the quiet, resolute decision to no longer participate in anything that diminishes your spirit. Of course, there will be moments when the urge to explain returns, when the ghost of guilt creeps in, and you begin to wonder if you should have said more, done more, offered one last chance. In those moments, hold this truth close. If your voice had ever truly mattered to them, they would not have waited for your silence to notice its absence. If they can only hear you in the echo of your departure, they were never truly listening at all. So let your absence be the final word. Let your quiet be the unbreachable boundary. Cease the struggle to be seen by those who chose to look away when it mattered most. True power is not found in the volume of your exit, but in the quiet dignity with which you refuse to stay. Once you master the language of silence, you will never again waste your breath on those who are unworthy of your words. You will learn that some doors are not meant to be slammed, but simply left behind. For the most powerful message you can ever send is sometimes no message at all. If these words have found a home within you, your journey toward clarity and strength can continue. Explore one of the videos on your screen to walk this path further. We are grateful to have you with us at the Stoic Journal.